that is really what it's really about, is that you have everything that you need already. You just have to uncover it, and you got to dig it out. So everybody's always like, how am I going to make it? You got to look within. All the answers are within.
Welcome into the podcast, another episode of Livin Large. Today's guest is a South African business owner. He has his own brand called Monbeau Afrique.
Monbeau Afrique.
Welcome to the show, Chace
Munashe, there we go.
I keep messing up your name, bro.
Yeah, you practiced that a few times, but you got it right.
Welcome to America.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, man. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
So you have this brand, Monbeau Afrique.
Yes.
You started it in South Africa.
That's correct.
Right now, you opened up your first store in Beverly Hills at the Beverly Center.
Yes.
What is the goal with this brand? And tell me a little bit about the history.
Monbeau, it's evolved over time. It was first My Beauty. That's the original name.
Okay.
My Beautiful Africa. And the whole idea behind the initial part of the brand was to showcase the best of Africa, create a brand that could compete at a global standard, regardless of which sector or departments that we build our products in. Mm-hmm. And to inspire the people to be able to push their limits and go beyond.
Okay. So
that was the base of the brand, and then we've kind of built it out, and it's become a bit more elaborate over the years. We've had our ups and downs, but we're in a decent position now, and we obviously pushing forward to build out a global, international luxury brand. So be that as may, it's one of Africa's first luxury and beauty brands. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, the idea behind it is just really creating something that sets the bar up for others from the African continent, and as well people from places that they may think it's not possible for them to achieve things at a global standard and prove that it can be done.
What is it like running a business in South Africa? I mean, I've never been.
All right.
And, I see how corporate America is.
Right.
Is it similar there? Is it more difficult?
It's definitely a lot more challenging. You have a lot of restrictions of suppliers, of options. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know about the rolling blackouts that we have there, but we have a lot of electricity challenges as well in South Africa. So,
what's the reason behind that?
Just bad general management of the energy system. It's government run, and so there's been some challenges there, and so we'll have like blackouts for 2 hours in a day, and so they start to grid it out.
Okay.
So it's like each section of the grid gets 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, and so that definitely affects manufacturing. It affects deliverables in terms of just people getting stuff out on time. Then as well, there's the challenge of the currency, so, you have a subjectively weak currency.
Okay.
But you're still able to, so South Africa is the converging point into Africa. And so everything does come through there, but you have access to stuff, but you got a weak currency that you're working against. So it's, I think, currently 18.5 or 19 rand to the dollar.
Wow.
So when you're shipping things in, etc., it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But if you're living inside the hub of South Africa and you're working in there and you're operating there, from a comparative perspective, it's a beautiful place. The buildings are great. In certain areas, there is obviously a big disparagence between the rich and the poor. Mm-hmm. But it's great, so you can live a great life. There's a lot of options of different things. So when you're in the hub, it's beautiful. When you're trying to do business at a global standard, it definitely has its challenges in comparison to, the United States or other places in the world.
Is there poverty there?
There's quite a lot of poverty. So there's 60 million people in South Africa.
60 million?
60 million.
Wow.
And I think the unemployment rate is like 40 or 50%.
Wow.
So it's very high, so there's quite a bit of poverty. There's struggle. Again, it's similar to America in that format, but it's just a lot smaller, so you feel it a lot more. Mm-hmm. So the challenges are a lot more exasperated. It's a lot more relevant, visible.
So how do you, because Monbeau Afrique, it's no cheap brand, it's a luxury brand.
Yeah.
How do you operate a luxury brand in a place where there's a 40% unemployment rate?
So it's location.
Okay.
It's the age old. And so, as I said, it follows a similar, think about South Africa as just a mini America, because when you come to America, from the outside, you definitely can see that there is, I don't know if you live inside, you kind of feel it, but I get to see that there is, some rough parts of America. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's more upmarket, and the middle class is more. It's a wider range of middle class, but it's all about location. And so we are fortunate enough to be in the best locations in South Africa.
Okay, so you're in the rich part.
we can call it that. Yeah. I mean, Sandton is the richest square mile in Africa.
Okay.
So that's actually where our base is.
And what does that wealth look like? Is it a huge disparity? Are we talking billionaires, or is it more so millionaires? And then,
it's more. So middle class is a bit tight, then it goes up in quite an exponential curve. Mm-hmm. Multi-millionaires. So
okay.
Again, if you're comparing it to the US dollar, a millionaire there will be 100,000 here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you have millionaires at a basic level who live the aspirational life but can reflect certain things. Then you have the concentration gets very tight. Where you have the multi-millionaires, call it the millionaire US dollar group of people. They're very strong in that area. So, I mean, you get a good line of business from there. And then the billionaires, you don't really see that much of them because they're generally international. They're in their offices or they're in their corners, So the flow comes out. But Sandton's a great place. If you go to Sandton, you're going to feel like you're in New York. Mm-hmm. Cape Town is... It's literally one of the best cities in the world for many years. It's still top 5, top 10 cities in the world. So Cape Town is stunning. Obviously, again, you have that difference, but it's a beautiful place. So, and then we're in Durban as well, which is a place called Mhlanga. It's by the ocean, so that's also beautiful as well. And so we are in the best places possible. How we do business is we have a lot of loyal customers. People buy, people do support. They go on the journey with us. So, as much as there is a high 40% unemployment rate, where there is money, the flow is strong. Okay. And we're there.
So you grew up in South Africa, yeah?
Yes.
When did you come to America for the first time?
I came to America when I was 18. So I came with my sister. We were looking at some colleges, and my sister was going to study at New York Film Academy. Mm-hmm. And so I came here fresh out. So we finished school at 18. That's at the end of high school, 12th grade. And so then you could generally go to university. We don't have college, where you guys have college here. Yeah. And so I came at 18. We were looking around. We came to LA. That was actually an interesting story, an interesting experience, because I came here and for the first time I saw such a high concentration of wealth, because we're like Beverly Hills, we're Universal Studios. We're going to all the places, right? Looking around New York Film Academy, in the Valley. So we're going around UCLA, Santa Monica, and I just saw a lot of people with a high amount of wealth, but very young. A lot of people are driving Porsches, fancy cars like kids, And in South Africa, you used to only seeing maybe people 40, 50 years old, high positions driving those kind of cars. So that was the first time I came to America. It was an interesting experience. It definitely motivated me to push hard and start working. Mm-hmm. It actually funnily came about as a story of how it is that I got to what it is that I'm doing right now. It was the inspiration point, at least. Off a challenging situation.
So you're raised in South Africa. You're of Zimbabwean
I was born in Zimbabwe, yeah.
When I want to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Before you ever came to America as a South African, what was your perception of America?
America's the apple of the world, right? It's like when you get to America, you made it. Okay. And America is obviously a very well established place of commerce and culture and, entertainment. So a lot of the world looks to America. So when you're coming from far, I mean, I was fortunate. I've traveled quite a bit in my life, so I wasn't fresh off the boat.
Yeah.
But it definitely was. We're coming to the big playing field.
And then after coming for your first time, did your perception of it change, or was it what you thought it would be?
So it was what I thought it would be, but it was also because I was in a very particular place, So I was in arguably one of the richest places in America.
Yeah.
So, we're out in Beverly Hills and you see like the grass is perfectly cut and it looks like you're on a movie set, you know, and everything's just like, what is this, So I got that extreme version of it. And that gave me obviously it almost crystallized the perception, which sometimes a lot of the time perception is not reality, but it crystallized that perception. And so it gave me the standard that I felt that I deserved to be able to compete at the best level in life. And at least I seen what it is. So it drove me to want to compete at that level.
Yeah, you talk about you came to LA and you saw all these Porsches around, and it motivated you to like want to make a change in your life back in South Africa.
Right.
Talk about that experience a little bit and what you did when you got back.
So after the trip, we spent quite a bit of money whilst we were here, and my dad, he was like, he was not so happy about the kind of expenditure that especially myself, because I like things as a kid, So, he's like, you spend so much money. And I said, okay, no, I'll pay you back and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, how are you going to pay me back? And so I said, well, I'll go get a job. And this is, again, I'm 18 years old, stubborn. I think I'm cool and think life is in my favor. So he's like, where are you going to get a job? And that can pay me back for the money.
How much did you owe him?
What is it like? Let me check the exchange. I think I spent I'm trying to do it. It was like $7,000, $8,000.
US?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As an 18-year-old?
Yeah, as an 18-year-old.
With no job?
No, with no job, exactly. And I was not here for that, like we I got the limo and, fetching us, living life, right? Ended up at some concerts, at Lil Wayne's concert and, backstage, blah, 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 all that kind of vibe. But in the end of the day, it was that actually I went and I got a job. I had a friend and, an Israeli friend of mine, and I asked them for a job. I said, hey, I just need a job. And they said, okay, cool. I can connect you with someone. So they connected me with someone and they're like, hey, this job, and I got a poster for it. And I thought it was a promotional job, t-shirt kind of vibe. And it ended up being, selling mud.
Mud?
Yeah. Dead Sea mud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there healing benefits to it or
something?
Yeah.
Okay. It's just, many years ago, they were all over the place. So all over, almost like a plague in the mall, selling the mud for like psoriasis and so on and so forth. So I got that job and, I started to realize that maybe there was some money-making opportunities there. I started working. I started to do fairly well. I'm very competitive. And, I was in all my colleagues were all Israelis and they're all working. So very, very hungry, very strong salespeople. So I had to improve a lot, but I learned a lot from my managers at the time and started making some money. I think at 21, I ended up coming home. 2 years later, I bought my first Porsche.
Wow.
After the LA experience.
Okay.
That's why I said it almost, because I was like, I actually was going to go buy a BM, and then I was like, no, I remember I was going to buy myself a Porsche.
Yeah.
I really wanted to buy an M6 at the time, like the little Shark, but then I ended up going to buy my first Porsche 21. By 23, I had made my first $1 million, million rand before, of course, by 20, but $1 million by 2023.
By selling mud?
Yeah, by selling mud. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right.
That's an incredible story because at 18, you're in debt to your dad.
Right.
You go get this job. You went to Israel to do the job?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was in South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
You get this job. You start selling mud.
Right.
You buy your Porsche.
Right.
And then
living
a few
large.
years later, you make $1 million.
Right.
That's insane. What was it like because you mentioned 40-year-olds are driving Porsches in South Africa.
Right.
What did it feel like for you, and what was the perception of you taken as in South Africa as a 21-year-old driving a Porsche?
So everyone kind of thought I had a rich dad, and they're like, yeah. So like, no, it's mine, and then they're like, yeah, please, you know. So I actually got a number plate Chace Me on my Porsche, you know. So people would always just wonder if, you know, I've got a rich dad, and for me, it was that thing to show my dad. So, you know, I wanted to prove to him that I could do it.
Why?
You know, I got a good relationship with my dad. This has developed over years, but you know, at a younger stage, I wasn't a scholar.
Okay.
I didn't like school. And my sisters were very successful in school. They did very well. You know, my brother was, you know, top sportsman. And for many years in the initial part of my schooling life, I was bullied.
Okay.
So I was put in a grade above my age. I was actually in the same grade as my older sister when they put us in our school in South Africa when I moved from Zim. Because, you know, from the intelligent perspective, I was able to pass the test, but I was a runt of a kid, so I got bullied in school, and really didn't like school. This is when I was in my younger years. So as I then went into, and as well, you know, life was not easy from a financial perspective in the early stage. So I didn't like school by any means, and I didn't see the need of it. And I was reading like psychology books from like 14, 15, 16, that I prefer to read those books than even read school books. So my dad comes from a very old school. His parents were teachers.
In Zimbabwe?
In Zimbabwe, yeah.
Okay.
Both of his parents are teachers. And so, you know, school, scholar, that kind of life was just what he would recognize. And, you know, he was in a bank and you know, he was a top scholar as well. So he respected that as something that was good or valuable in, you know, what he wanted his children to be. And I wasn't that. So it was very contentious for a time period where I was like, I'm going my own way. And, you know, as well, I come very religious background as well. So
What religion?
Christian, yeah, but more like the Orthodox Christian, you know, like very, you know, they're called end time believers, yeah, very strict. So that was very contentious at that time, and I also wanted to break free and kind of figure myself out. I've always had a high sense of personal discipline to myself, so, you know, never do crazy things. Like, I'm not wild, but I wanted to do things my way and figure that out. So that was more about a pushback towards him, and I wanted to show him. So when people also kind of say, "Oh, that's your dad's money," I'm like, actually not. You know, it's really all me. And for a good period of time, I had to raise my sense of self-value through outer things. So that's why I also bought that. And at that initial stage of making money, you know, I was trying to look cool.
Yeah, at a young age, yeah.
You know,
I did the same thing. When I got money, I was like,
yeah,
I'm getting a nice car.
That's it, yeah.
I got to prove
they're gonna know me.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna know me, yeah.
What's it like having parents from Zimbabwe? What's the parenting style like? What are some struggles that you faced growing up?
So I don't know if you've got like any like old school, you know, like African American or black friends or whatever, where they like, so there's a lot of discipline in like a traditional black household, you know what I mean? So I was disciplined a lot, you know, the corporal punishment discipline. And so, but you know, my parents are great. They really did their best to give us a platform for us to be able to step up. They're first generation, obviously from a financial stepping perspective, it's been that development that we have to create a foundation, start creating sustainability for our family name and so on and so forth. So they were great parents. They tried their best. And, you know, as you grow older, maybe when you're younger, you feel like your parents, you have an opinion about certain things that your parents might have done to you. But as you grow older, you start to understand that, you know, they too are just human beings, and they try their best. So, you know, there was a fair bit of amount of pain between myself and my dad that needed to heal. But in that process of growing up and becoming my own man, I started to find a space to be able to heal that process between myself and himself.
What are some struggles you faced with your father?
I think we're similar, but dissimilar. So I'm definitely my father's child by many principles, but he wanted things his way and I wanted things my way. And his way was right because he was the adult, and my way was right because it was my life. So a lot of people have that contention with their parents, especially if they're strong characters. And I was underneath his wing. So at 18, that's actually also what drove me out to say, I'm going to go make my own money. I am not going to be dependent on him. You know, I'm not going to be limited by his limitations and his struggles. They're not going to define me. And so I really was like, from 16, I was like, I can't wait until I'm going to be able to work. And then when all of this unraveled when I was 18, I was just like, I'm out, you know, and I left home at 18. And I just started working. I think I had maybe like $5, I'm not even joking, like to my name when I left home. But it's not the typical I was on the street kind of story. You know, fortunately enough, I was able to stay inside a working house, you know, selling the mud and so on and so forth. But like I left really with no money.
Was that scary for you?
I wanted to get out.
You would rather be broke. And
I didn't care. You know, I'm one of those. I don't care. As soon as I put my mind to something, I'd rather be broke. I'd rather suffer than suffer under conditions that are not self-made. I'd rather suffer. I literally say that to my staff all the time now. I say, you know, anyway we're going to suffer, so we might as well choose our suffering, because even if you're doing somewhat good in life, you're making some money, whatever, you still experience a lot of pain in your own way.
Yeah.
You know, there's rich people pain, there's poverty pain, there's real life pain, there's mental pain, there's all these different kinds of pain, right? And so anyway, you're in pain, right? So you might as well choose your pain. And then at least you're able to push beyond whatever that pain point is if you choose your own pain.
That's a really interesting perspective.
And that's just my take on life. So it wasn't that crystal when I was 18, but I knew that I'd rather suffer than to be underneath somebody's rule and subjective to, oh, okay, you didn't do that, so I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm your kid. You know, I used to fight and say I didn't choose to be born.
I said the same thing to my
Right.
dad.
Yeah. Right.
You made me come here.
Exactly. Like, I didn't choose to be here. So, you know, why is my life, you know, why am I suffering? Right. So, I mean, it's funny because, I mean, we're coming from completely different sides of the world, right? But, you know, there's so many relatable facts, and somebody can say, oh, you know, proverbially, you know, your white privilege and, you know, African or black or whatever it is, and they could try and make it a racial thing or a segmental thing. But you start to realize that everybody is suffering from the same things everywhere in the world. It is at different levels, of course, but everyone is suffering, you know, the human condition.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying to figure it out. And so, again, it was also about, you know, because I was starting to deal with an international group, the Israelis at the time, I started to learn that it's in my interest to grow my worldview and understand that the better I can understand this, you know, the better I can bring that back, first of all, to my family, and then to the new generation of people that we're all growing up and we're all trying to figure it out. And, you know, we have to have, you know, I love Tony Robbins and I listen to his stuff. You know, I love, you know, I listen to everybody, you know, Jordan Peterson, you know, I listen
Jocko
to him.
Willink or whatever his guy's name.
Yeah, I listen to, you know, the cool guys, you know, Tom Bilyeu, you know, those are people.
Huberman.
I don't listen to Huberman.
Okay.
You know, I listen to some podcasts of different people as well that great content. I'm always reading books. You know, I've read all the typical books. You know,
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, all of those. Yeah, my favorite book is actually The Alchemist is a phenomenal book by Marco Coelho, and you know, I also love The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a great book to read. You know, and then you know, there's different. You know, the Power of Now. That's a phenomenal book. That's a phenomenal book. It is actually it's my wife. She actually put me on that one. You know, when we started dating actually early COVID time, and I was going through a lot at that time, and that book really made a difference as well in my life. So anybody who's going through struggles, I recommend that book highly. The Power of Now.
You talk about the struggle of the human condition. You brought up white privilege and African American.
Right.
Is there racism in South Africa? Have you ever experienced racism?
So me particularly, not often. I almost experience the reverse racism. You know, it's like people who technically could be racist would always say, they'll say to me, "You're different." You know what I mean? So it was that weird thing for me for the majority of my life. You know, obviously, you know, my dialect, my language and how I speak is pretty up there in terms of communication. And you know, English is not Africa's first language. So a lot of the Africans don't speak English as well as what a British person would or a white person could, right?
Right.
Because that's what they speak. So they would always use that as a form of intelligence, and language is not a form of intelligence, but it is seen as that for those who want to communicate that, oh, you speak so well, you know?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've always treated it as a form of intelligence.
So it's actually
if
not.
You could speak multiple languages, I'm like, damn, you're smart.
Well, it is and it's not. I mean, first of all, babies, they if you speak to a child, a baby, in multiple languages, they pick up the languages very quickly. You know, again, it's the old school, and this is Tony Robbins. He's like, if it's the immersion of, it's how I learned how to speak Hebrew. Hebrew is not an easy language for me to speak, but I can speak it because I was surrounded by Israelis. So you just have to learn. If I drop you in the middle of Japan or Italy, you're going to learn the language after a month, one way or another. You're going to learn how to communicate.
I lived in Germany for 4 months, and I started to learn like groceries and stuff like that.
You can navigate, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's not a limitation or a form of intelligence. I mean, obviously there are people who learn very quickly, and that can be a form of intelligence, but the language dialect, that I wouldn't frame it as that. But it is one way that, you know, people have communicated to me. And it's always been like a weird situation because I'm like, yo, you know, you're kind of speaking about my race and degrading them to me, but telling me that I'm better than them, which I don't think is what I really want to be.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just want to be myself, but cool. But there is definitely a lot of racism in South Africa.
Is it predominantly white there or predominantly black?
It's predominantly black. So it's predominantly black, but most of the money is white.
Okay.
Right. We're a recent. I mean, we had independence in 1994.
Right.
That's
Nelson Mandela, right?
Yes. Yeah, Nelson Mandela. Very, very. That's like less than 25, 30 years. Our democracy is very young. So ultimately, you know, the people with a great deal of money were the colonialists, right? The Dutch, who are known as the Afrikaans. I can actually speak Afrikaans as well. You know, it's a language I can speak, and they have a lot of the money. And so
what does Afrikaans sound like? Say a sentence.
Hoe gaan dit? Ons is op podcast. I'm trying to freestyle a sentence. You know, it's always like, say something in that language, and you're like, hi, how are you?
Hey, or thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a real honor.
Dankie, dankie toch. Now I'm just fumbling it. Now I've been
It
put on
kind
the
of
spot.
sounds German.
It's actually very similar to ek kan Afrikaans praat eintlik. Die taal ek praat 70%. Ek verstaan die hele taal. Dis Afrikaans. So
I don't know what you just
I
said.
just said I can speak the language of Afrikaans.
Okay.
It's about 70% dialect, and I can understand the whole language.
Okay.
So that's what that sounds like in principle. So it's Dutch. It's very similar to Dutch. They are from literally they came from Holland, from the Netherlands, the colonialists, through the Dutch Eastern Company. So the racism is there, but now because of democracy, it's kind of low key, high key. It's kind of like America, it's like there but not there, kind of vibe. And then there's obviously classism. That's a big thing as well. And then there's also reverse racism to a certain degree, because now,
Against whites, you're saying?
Yeah. Now the black people are getting a little bit more money and, taking the reins back to a certain degree. It is leading party. It has been since the dawn of democracy in South Africa, which is the ANC. So they now bringing themselves back into the fray, and sometimes that can obviously lead to the reverse again. But most of the money again is still where it's at.
As a black man from South Africa,
right?
What were your thoughts on the whole Black Lives Matter movement in America? I'm curious to see an outsider's perspective.
So you see what's going on, and I try to stay out of anything political as much as possible, because, you're going to have an opinion about something, but I think a lot of people have opinions about things that they don't have enough information to really speak on. So you can see the hurt, you can see what's going on, and in principle, the movement is a good movement. Black Lives Matter, obviously, it's when you have one extreme polar, you're going to have the extreme polar opposite. So if you're going to suppress black people to an extreme, you're going to have the polar opposite, that people are going to revolt, right? That's where revolutions come from. And so it's understandable. And naturally, when you have such a movement, there is the right way to do it in terms of the most productive way to do it, which is not written in stone. You can't say what is the perfect way to do it, but there's a better way to do things, and there's obviously a less productive way to do things. And naturally, some people have, they got the wrong memo, and so then they detract away from it by their actions. But in principle, I think, okay, it makes sense. You have the pushback, but they're a minority in America. America is like 80-20, 80 more white, and then 20 African American, and so on and so forth. From the stats, maybe it's a little bit less and more, but so they're a minority and they're pushing out for relevance, and I can understand it, but I wouldn't have too much of an opinion on it, because their pains are not my pains. I have a different pain. I can't relate to Black Lives Matter pain because that's coming from a different source. We could start a African Lives Matter to the Europeans and the American continent. But again, it's a different kind of pain. But I definitely can understand it.
What are some struggles you faced? Because you mentioned to me on the phone, we had a call before, that there are not many black CEOs. What are some struggles that you faced in being a CEO of a company?
So for a long time, I've hidden as the CEO. I'm only coming out of the shadows recently now, because obviously the playing field is just wide and big, and we're here. So I can't hide forever. But I didn't bring myself to the forefront for a long time, because I didn't want my race, my age, anything about me to detract away from the business that I was doing, because I'm one of very few people. I started in cosmetics, and I'm a black male selling cosmetics, right? It's not common by any means possible. It's not even common for, it's not even a lot of white males that are selling it,
Yeah.
right? It's like that have a company of
Yeah.
cosmetics. So that's one thing. And that's where I started. It started as a cosmetics business before we added the fragrances, and then went to apparel and manufacturing leather. So being a minority in the initial segment of what I was inside of was difficult in itself. And so I had to hide myself away to kind of detract, to just make that not be the topic of point of topic rather. Then as well, again, there's the trust of, you can't get money from banks, and you can't get, the whole whoop-de-whoop.
Yeah.
Those struggles, they definitely are prevalent. Because institutions, they look at you in a certain kind of way, and then even worse, it's like, oh, what's your college degree, and what's this and what's that, and you don't have that. So they're like, who the hell are you,
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same for other races, but I can't really speak on it. But it definitely, you can feel it when trying to do stuff, and trying to get support from the infrastructure of a system, and not having a lot of mentors or examples is definitely a hard one. So that's actually what I really wanted to create for the next generations. I wanted to be, I've got all these potentials and skills of everything that I want to be, and but I don't really have a good example. And Tony Robbins, as much as I love his content, I got no relation to the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm from Africa. I'm like, what the hell?
Right.
How okay, all the advice, I can advise a young black guy from Africa on how to go global because I've gone through that. There's no relation to an American white male and his struggles to coming my advice from that position. So
Right.
it becomes difficult. There's the principles that are all the same globally, but it's very difficult for you to connect to that and believe that you can do it. So I didn't have a lot of those, and that was also a very big struggle, being a CEO. And then one of the weird ones was, there's a lot of CEOs, right? Everybody's like, I'm a CEO, I'm a boss, right?
Yeah,
So then you're part of what seems like a big pool of people, but a lot of them are just title CEOs, self-made.
Yeah.
And it's also separating yourself from, I read a book, The Leader Without a Title, and it's a great book. And so as much as I was the CEO, I didn't walk around saying I'm the CEO, because even to today, if I need to sweep, if I need to engage a customer directly, if I need to do whatever is necessary, I'll always do what's necessary, because I'm never too big. The title is not relevant to me.
Yeah.
I just work.
You talked a little bit about like being a role model for the next generation and being able to relate to a young black kid.
Right.
Who are some role models that you look up to? Because I've seen conversations about this, like in the business space, who is the go-to African-American role model? Because you have like, you guys crush it in sports.
Right.
Killing us,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But do you think that the black community lacks role models in that space?
It does, and it does from different elements. There are those who are coming up, but let's say somebody is a movie star and then they end up in business. Jay-Z is a great example. He ultimately is a good role model, but he's a role model that came about in a very particular kind of way. So he came about, it's the big five, of where black people make money in America, sports, music, whatever, the typicals, right?
Yeah.
And so he's coming from the entertainment industry, and obviously a lot of black American guys are going to want to be rappers or artists. So they can look up to him, but for me, I've never wanted to be a rapper, right, at all. So he got famous, and then he became a businessman. Obviously, he was in the business of music, and then he's become a businessman. So you can learn from that and see that, okay, the principle of reinvesting back into yourself or into your grind, that's definitely a great example. So you can take the principles that you see certain people applying and saying those are good role models at a certain level, but there's a big gap from getting from where the projects where he started at, getting to a point of fame and then transitioning that into something different. So now, let's say you don't have that point of fame. How do you get to that point then to transition to something different, right?
Right.
So in a lot of communities, if it's the Jewish, the Italian, if even the Arab, communities, a lot of communities, the Indian communities, if there's somebody who's successful, their father, their grandfather, whatever, they can learn from those people. And it's very close to home. So, or they can have at least come and work inside the dad's little shop and take it from one little shop in the corner to a global empire, whatever. So there's those kind of role models as well, more from a practical perspective. There's how do you best leverage and apply yourself? I think there are some good examples from the African community there, but I still think there's a big lack of those who have literally started from the bottom, from business, and now have made it and keep showing people that is possible, yet there's 1,001 of them, in different other communities. So there's definitely a lack of those still. And people have obviously monetized where they can monetize from, and now doing the best that they can, and they're doing great jobs globally. But we still need, from just business, raw business, just grind, raw grind. We do need a lot more of that. There's a guy, his name is Aliko Dangote. He's arguably Africa's richest man, if not Africa's richest man. He's from Nigeria. Now, he did have some help from his father, but he's taken that just to the next level, and he's like in cement, agriculture. He's like the hard business,
Okay.
The hard business, and he's doing really great. And there's a guy as well in South Africa. His name is Patrice Motsepe. He's in mining. That mining is almost like the rapper wish for a black African person. It's like, I want to get into mining, right? Everyone wants to get into mining as an African. I never wanted to get into mining, but that's also one of those channels. But there are people in those sectors that are doing good, and giving a good example. But we need a bigger spectrum, because it's too concentrated in very few things, or in very few ways that there's still a gap to, okay, if I'm not that, then how do I get there? Elon Musk is a great example.
Yeah.
He's actually from South Africa.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He's from Pretoria. And again, he might be a white male from South Africa, but he's from a very difficult, he's done that journey. So I actually reference Elon a lot. I like his working principle. I mean, I work like crazy. Maybe he takes it to the next level above. I'm maybe borderline just about to enter his sector of just working like mad, but maybe that's not healthy. But he definitely has obviously pushed from a very difficult place, irrespective of the fact that people can call him privileged.
Do a lot of people look up to him in South Africa? Or do they hate him?
I don't think they look up or they don't look up to him. I think South Africa generally focuses on itself internally, and people are just there. Obviously, there are people who do, but it's not. Those who like him will like him, but it's not like the main guy that people are looking up to as the guy.
Would you say that most South Africans are content with being in South Africa, or is the dream to go to America, make it in America?
I think a great deal of them are content.
Okay.
They're proud, and they're going to be the ones who are trying to globalize, who, okay, they want to go to America. But I think a lot of South Africans are trying to, if it's the Afrikaans, they're content in this space because that's their home. They don't see themselves as Dutch or from Netherlands. They're like, we're South African, and they're very proud. And then, the black South African, they're proud, and they're starting to come to themselves of seeing them. They're not all destined to be in poverty and enslaved to whatever degree. So they're leaning into their culture and their pride in the nation. So I think people are content.
Have you been back to Zimbabwe?
I went back one time to go get my license at 16, because you get your license at 18 in South Africa. So I went and got my license at 16. But
what's it like there? What's Zimbabwe like?
To be honest, it's the place that I spent the least amount of time. I've got the least memory of anything in Zimbabwe. it used to be known as the breadbasket of Africa. It has gone down a lot. My parents do go back quite often. People, it's hard. But again, it's like you got a very small amount of people with a great deal of money, and then everybody else is hard. But the Zimbabweans are beautiful natured people, and they just vibe. You know, you'll find that in Africa. If you go to like downtrodden places where and people are happy and people have got a good spirit, you're like, how can you be so happy in such struggle? But it's the nature of the place that is beautiful, and it's definitely worth visiting.
I would love to go sometime. The only place in Africa I've ever been is Morocco.
Stunning.
Yeah.
I haven't been, but I know it's a beautiful place.
So you start the company in South Africa, and now you're facing some, I'm assuming, challenges coming to America. A question I wanted to ask you, because I'm rocking the shirt.
You got that Monbeau.
You hooked me up. I appreciate it.
For sure.
This isn't cheap.
Yeah.
How do you come into a space and try to just set yourself in the luxury market and compare, what is this, $130 shirt?
Right.
Your fragrances range from $150 to $400.
Yeah, $450.
How do you come into this space?
That's for the 1.7. So we have a 3.4, and that's actually double the price. So the one that's $450, our most expensive fragrance, is about $820.
How do you come into America, for example? I don't know the establishment of your brand in South Africa, and compete with people who have that reputation of like Gucci and Saint Laurent and Louis Vuitton, that their name.
Right. So the baseline, even in South Africa, there's that challenge of everybody looks at the global brands, and that is the standard. So, people say they want to support African and Black owned business. They say that in principle. Yeah. But in reality, they're going to be like, why is it so expensive? This is the same price as Dior. Like, when you price yourself when you put the standard on yourself, then they question you of why you think you're worth it. And that's even in Africa, even probably more so in Africa than even in America, in my experience over time. But coming to America and pricing it, for me, I've always been one that I set my price and I know that I'm worth it, and I put in the effort to it, and so that's the price I'm going to sell it at. And also, the number one thing I always say to my staff and team are always going to be that one-on-one, we beat everybody in customer experience. We put a lot of attention to the customer experience and the customer engagement. It's not the process of selling; it's the process of buying. And it's almost like everybody gets a bespoke or tailored interaction to them. So we're very at a personal level. That's something that we're phenomenal at, and we put a great deal of effort and time into the training and for the staff members. And then we just work so hard, honestly. Reputation when we open in a mall. After a month, everybody knows that we are there, and it's more about how we work. We're just always just running, pushing, and I'm not signing up to all the we need a break, chill out kind of vibes. I'm like, nah, push. That's it. No breaks here. So that's definitely a way to surpass that challenge of price point. And then it's, Lil Wayne said it in one interview. He's like, I do what I think is cool, and if you don't think it's cool, then I think you're not cool, right? So it's like, if you're not cool with our price, then I just think that you're not cool with quality stuff, because if you look at the quality of our items, we actually put an effort into making sure that we have the highest quality of materials. Our materials are high quality. Our fragrances, that's like an elixir. Even though I manufacture these fragrances, I'm surprised at people's reaction to the fragrances sometimes. It's like, I would say to customers, like, I wish I could record what you're saying, because if I were to tell a customer that, if you're like trying to buy something from us and I'm like to give you the speech, you're going to be like, this guy's just, he's cooked. What is he even saying? Somebody's like, yeah, I sprayed this and it lasted me 1 month. 1 month? Even I'm like, 1 month? It lasted you 1 month? But people got a lot of crazy stories on our fragrances, great ones about the performance and how much they love it. So we put a great deal of value into our product line. And so if you actually try it, you'll know it's worth it. And so I can't degrade myself to a Gucci or to a Louis because they're doing their own thing and I'm doing my own thing. There's no connection between us except for the fact that we deal in the same market space.
What makes this $130 shirt? You talk about the quality. What is that?
So there's grades of material.
Okay.
You know, we use higher grade. I mean, it's if I put it in layman's terms, it's like you have C grade, D grade material, which is what you'll buy maybe
Like a Hanes t-shirt or something.
super cheap in principle, and then you have A grade. So like when I go to manufacture, I'm like, okay, what's the best material that you have in terms of this? Then we go for a good cut, something that's a little bit different, very clean, very simple, not over the top, and luxury, quiet luxury. It's in the taste. So if that was supposed to be $80, it's just because it's tasteful that it bumps it up another $40. Because you look at it, it's clean. It works with anything.
When you started the company, did you have to level up, or were you like? Because when I sit here and I've always wanted to start a clothing company,
Right?
And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start with t-shirts and sweatshirts and hats, the baseline stuff,
Right.
Like you said, just get blanks that are not cheap, but like I'm not going for quality. Did you have to do that, or you just come in and you're like, hey, we're doing a luxury brand?
So all our product that we've manufactured, I started at the highest. The cosmetics, what's the highest, best quality, natural, no parabens, just, sustainable. What's the best pitch that I could verbally say? And then how do I make sure that the product matches the pitch? Because I'm a salesperson first. So I can sell anything. I can sell a cheap item. I sold mud, right? That's it. So, you can sell mud at a high price, right?
It's crazy.
Make a couple of mil from it, right? So now that you can sell that, it's useful to make sure that the product matches the speech. And that's actually what put me into manufacturing. I said, I know I can sell it, so I want to make sure that I give the best quality to the consumer, because anyway, I'm going to sell it. And, you're always selling yourself, right? People buy into you, they buy into your energy, they buy into your, what you're presenting, especially as a good salesperson. Some people find the word a salesperson in like almost like a swear word, right? But
like a car dealer.
Right. But there's no business in the world that does not have sales.
Right.
Which means that you got to be selling.
Yeah.
Google is a big salesperson, right?
Google Ads. I'm selling myself.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. We're all selling. So people are like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, whatever. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about. Your framework is just very limited to limited perception. But it's also because salespeople haven't done themselves favors, because some of the best salespeople sell some of the worst product, right? That's what makes them so good, because they really got to be a great salesperson because the product is terrible. So I was like, okay, I'm a great salesperson. So if I have a great product and I'm a great salesperson, I can sell. I can do anything. You can do anything if magic made it.
What's it like building a fragrance? What goes into these? And talk about the names you have, because they're all French.
So
how do you build a scent?
So scents come from, if it's different ingredients, flower ingredients, it's going to have, rose, you have sandalwoods, patchoulis, you have jasmine, you have your, wood kind of smell. So there's 3 levels to a fragrance. There's a top note, middle note, and base note. Then there's different properties of how a fragrance operates. There's sillage, there's projection, there's longevity. So those are the three sets of different buzzwords between building a fragrance. The sillage is that aura that it has, how it hangs, right? The projection is that, when somebody walks past you and you can smell them, right?
Yeah.
Projection. And then longevity, how long does it last on you? And then, then there's the different mechanisms to the materials that you're using, if it's the ingredients and the materials. So we're oil based, which lasts you a lot longer as well. It's a lot more dense. You can literally see that. And then we make our oils in France. So we went to the capital of fragrance in Grasse, France. And that's where, all the big brands make their fragrances. And so that's the starting point. Obviously there's a body and how you want it to present. So we got fresh, we got sweet, we have ouds, but not the Arabian ouds, just beautiful ouds. Not the Arabians are not beautiful, but beautiful ouds.
Well, I'm really stoked for the perfumes. I'm going to test them out here after the podcast. But you talk about mentors earlier. I want to have a mentor session here because you got a crazy story. You were in debt to your dad at 18. You went and sold mud and made $1 million, and then now you started this company. What is some advice that you would have for a young kid in trying to be an entrepreneur and a business owner?
There's different things that go through my head all the time. And there's hook phrases that, for example, I'll remind myself that keep me on the path. You obviously have to be very disciplined. There's the Simon Sinek start with your why, right? You have to have a compelling reason that you're going to do what you're going to do, else you're not going to be able to get through the tough times. And I think, again, I mentioned earlier that, you pick your struggles, because anyway, you're going to struggle. And so at least if you pick your struggle and you know why it is that you're struggling and you're consistent and you're disciplined, those elements are going to be very important to getting to anywhere that you're going to go in business. Lil Wayne has a saying. He says, "Be good or be good at it."
You love Lil Wayne,
right? So I actually use a lot of reference lines from rappers, because they have some great punchlines and so on and so forth. But
be good or be good.
Be good
at
or be good at it. Actually, another one I really like is and Drake stands for "Do Right and Kill Everything."
Yep.
Right. So I'm
Hell
like,
yeah.
that's it.
Hell
Do right
yeah.
and kill everything. And so you want to have different things that keep you motivated. You're gonna struggle a lot, and you're gonna sacrifice a lot naturally, and you're gonna lose friends and be alone and all those typical kind of stuff. But take a day at a time. That's also one of the most important things. If someone's asking me, how do you get to where you get it? Take one day at a time. You have to have a lot of faith, and you can't plan the way. The Secret says, this from The Secret, they're saying, it's like you're driving down a dark road and there's a light, your car lights, it only shows you a few meters ahead. And if you just trust that the next few meters are going to unfold, you'll get to where it is that you're going. And it's a discovery process. Again, another buzzword. Again, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right?
Right.
And it all sounds buzzwordy until you're actually on it. Staying grateful is a very important one. Having stability in your life, I think, is always a great one. If you have a good partner, if you're in a good relationship, that's always a great thing. After, the mud and studying and blah, 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 COVID was a very difficult time for me. And, my girlfriend at the time, who I met in the depth of COVID, who is now my wife, made such a big difference in that journey, because she's just supportive and gives a lot of love and a lot of attention, and so that's a very important one. And I think a lot of people, the people that are around you make a very big difference. In the early parts of COVID, when I was like maybe $200,000 in debt during COVID, the first phase, first month, shop everything literally bankrupt. Just 3 years ago, first of all, I had some good people who supported me, and because they knew who I was, they reminded me who it is that I was, even though I was doubting myself highly. And that support definitely gave me the courage to fight on, because that was a very bad time. And then again, it's the 5 people that surround you, the people that surround you. They make such a big difference, because if you're surrounded by people who don't have the right mindset or negative or those kind of things, if I'm feeling negative, who do I go to? when I'm the top of the food chain. And so when you're the top of the food chain, everybody's looking at you for the answers. And so if you don't have good people around you and you get into a negative space, who's going to save you?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people also compare, comparison's the thief of all joy. That's another one.
Yeah.
You got a great podcast, you have your thing going on, but you have your own struggles. And if I'm going to look at you and say, oh, Mark has something that I do not, everybody has something that the other person does not, for the good and for the bad. So you really got to count your blessings. And if you have one, it's like from the Bible, and God gave, I don't know if it was God or the talents were given to three different people, and one was given 1 talent, one was given 3, and one was given like 5. And so the one with 3 took it and multiplied it. The one with 5 took it and multiplied it, came back and said, look, I have multiplied. And the one who was given 1 took it and buried it in the ground. And then when it was time to reveal what he did with it, dug it out and said, look, I kept this 1 talent safe. And, if it was God or the master, I can't remember exactly, but assume the higher power that offered that support and help looked and was very upset and took that away from that person and gave it to those who multiplied with it. Is you got to be extremely resourceful. You may not have everything that the next person may have, who may have a bigger podcast or have a bigger following or have a bigger whatever than you. But when you're resourceful with what it is that you have, you're able to create more with it. You have to find those opportunities. Again, it comes from the Alchemist, the story of the Alchemist, and the journey that he went on. And it's literally, he almost started underneath the same tree. The pot of gold that he went on a full journey on was underneath the same tree that he started out before his journey began. But he had to go learn all this journey and learn all that loss and struggle and gain that wisdom to come back and find what was already underneath, where he was at. And that is really what it's really about, is that you have everything that you need already. You just have to uncover it and you got to dig it out. So everybody's always like, how am I going to make it? You got to look within. All the answers are within. And it sounds so, again, I always train my guys. If I'm training people, I say, be yourself. And it sounds like you go this long journey and everyone says, how do you become such a great salesperson? How do you do business? And I'm like, I am myself. And I don't fail to be myself any day. I am authentically myself. And if I'm going to be able to make money, if I'm going to be able to grow my life and I have to just be myself, at least I can know that I will be that every single day. I don't need to be somebody that I'm not in a different kind of environment, right? Where then I'm not in my most peak self. So all these elements are so important that you realize that you have to go on the long journey, and your 10,000 hours of being a master, of getting to mastery, is almost learning every way how not to do it. And then you just realize it's just as simple as what it was said to be. How do you be successful? Wake up, go work hard, don't get distracted, be disciplined. Those are the things you need to learn. And after you suffer and you think it's 1,000 different other ways, then you realize, wake up, work hard, stay focused, stay diligent, never give up, right? Never give up. That's just the one, because people hear, oh, you make $1 million, and then they think you got a stack of $1 million just sitting and your life is good. No, it's a nightmare running this business. It's a nightmare globalizing logistics, distribution, staff, learning new regulations, or it's a nightmare. You don't want to do it. I always say you don't want to be in my position because it's not fun. Oh, you fly a lot, this, that. Yeah, I do fly a lot, but you jet lagged for 2 days and you don't even know what to do with yourself. I land after a 16-hour flight and I'm in it straight away. And then it's a week, and then it's there, and then it's there, then it's there, and there's time away. So it's not fun. And if you think that you're going to be experiencing fun whilst going about your journey, when you take away the illusion, you come closer to the truth. And when you're closer to the truth, you're then actually able to do what you're here to do. And so for those who actually want to go on the journey, these different concepts are all concepts that are going to become really relevant in your life when you're actually doing it. And I don't say I've got the answer to all things, because I definitely don't. I'm still learning from my own journey and from every place that I can extract information from. I learn every single day, even from people that are in worse off positions from me or whatever. Sometimes it can just be learning that somebody has all their limbs, has all their body functioning, and they're so miserable with their life. And I'm like, I learned to be grateful, because you see somebody else who doesn't have those things and they're not grateful. So you can learn from people who have less than you, financially or resourcefully, from those different kind of ways. And then the people who have more than you, you see somebody who's very successful financially, maybe famous or whatever that you may assume you want to be. But then you meet them and then you realize that these people are not really happy. They're actually fairly miserable. Then you realize that the money is not going to make you happy either, right? So it's learning those kind of distinctions that is important. But if you are not experiencing at least a majority of some of the things that I just mentioned right now, you're probably not on your journey to where it is that your full potential could be. You're probably selling yourself short. You're probably not doing everything that you can do, because everybody who has gone on that journey in their highest level of potential, if you're going to do sports, if you're going to do business, if you're going to be in a relationship and you're working your relationship, you're going to experience these degrees of struggle and challenge. And you got to break past that. And if somebody is going to listen to nothing else that I got to say, do your own business, go about whatever it is that you're going to do it in your own way, I would recommend that you listen to just this, because that is going to make your life better. And then from there, you learn your next lesson. It's like PlayStation. There's the bigger the level, the higher the level, the higher the devil, right? You gotta keep smashing, but you gotta learn a different skill set. But when you're playing PlayStation and your character dies, you're like, oh, okay, let me just start over. But then you almost start to get a photographic memory of all the different things that all those little, things that are coming at you. You start to kill them faster, so you start to go through that level faster. Then you get to that final boss at the level of 1, and after 2-3 times of failing against it, you're then able to beat it, right? So you now can smash through the early stages very quickly. It takes you a little bit longer at the end of the boss. You go to the next level, then it takes you some time to learn that next stage, right? So I can do certain things with my eyes closed that other people may be trying to figure out how to do, like selling to a customer. There's so much information that I even forget half the stuff that what I forgot you will not learn kind of vibe, because I've been doing this for a long time. So somebody who's new to selling will be like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? But again, just new level, new devil, right? So this is what we're all going through. We're all in a PlayStation cycle. And so again, there's a misillusion. I'll end on this, but there's a misillusion that when you reach a certain level of success or you reach a certain level of output, that you don't have the struggles. I have the same day one struggles that I had when I was broke, when I didn't have anything, right? It's just, I go through them like dying at level number 8 and then having to, or let's say your memory gets wiped out. Now you have to start from the beginning. You're like bummed. You're like, no ways. I had to start from the beginning in COVID. But I was so aggressive. I've been so aggressive since post-COVID, because pre-COVID, if COVID hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. Because I always had the intention to open in America and to globalize, but I was focusing on my cosmetics business. I was busy being busy in that spectrum, right? So the challenge that came to me and broke me and sent me back to level number 1, I then was like, okay, if I have to start over again, I'm getting older. Like, there's no mercy this time. And because it's like going to the gym, if you stop going to the gym for a while, then you have to go back. You're now just, I don't care. I'm just going to push, right? And that's it. I just decided all or nothing. I don't care. All or nothing. And that's also, anybody who speaks to me knows I don't have plan B. there's only plan A. And some people are like, no, you should plan and have, contingencies. Only plan A. Get rich or die trying.
You love these right?
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
And I like to reference, some of these lines because, I got a tatted on my Chace, no apologies. Again, 2 tattoos, 1 red, no apologies. Again, it's not that I don't apologize as a human being. Of course, if I'm wrong, you apologize, but don't apologize for who you are, and don't apologize for where you want to go, because there will always be somebody telling you what you can't do, but they're telling you from their perception. I think it was 50 or Jay-Z was saying that people will tell you that you can't do it, but they're speaking from their own perception. You can't tell me what I can't do because you're not in my shoes. So if I tell you can't do something, or you can, the can is inspirational, okay, motivational, blah, blah, blah. But the can't is perceptional, right? And so
honestly, I'm more motivated by people telling me I can't.
Well, that's because it's because you've learned how to internalize that differently. You've been hit down so many times. I mean, I may not know everything where you're coming from, but I know it's like people coming from a certain kind of household. They're either that or the opposite. You've been hit down so many times that you just like, you've had it, right? Yeah. And so when someone says you can't, you're going to push more. But now I'm driven from a perspective where I don't even listen to other people telling me that I can't. It's my own experience of suffering again after succeeding, that I'm like, who am I kidding? Nothing is guaranteed. Even today, as I sit here, the business I have and the success and whatever, it's not guaranteed. Right. So why not just go at it? And we always want to think that we're going to live 1,000 years, but we're not. Life is a finite period of time, this life that we know it. So why wouldn't you give yourself the best? And this advice is advice that I give to anybody, and you can take it and you can do something with it from a young age, from somebody who's older and more older than what I am. You can take this advice. And another thing is, I always say, don't take advice from people who are not more successful than you. And if you're going to take business advice,
right? Don't take financial advice from a homeless person.
That's it, right? Don't take advice from anybody. People will have comments, but I'm going to look and say, okay, what are you doing in your life? And if you're doing something, you're a successful podcaster, and you're successful, in the YouTube world and in the social space. I can learn stuff from you. So whether I am in a higher position than you from a social standing or from a financial standing is irrelevant, because we have something, we have value exchange. From human being, the age-old times, we come from barter and trade, right? Right. So I can learn from you, and you can learn from me in a different kind of perspective. You can do that. That's being resourceful in a different way, and we're obviously all leaning on one another in one way or another. But in the end of the day, that's not, oh, you're less successful than me, so don't misunderstand that. But somebody who's literally doing nothing, sitting on their couch, keyboard warrior, and they have something to say about you, who's listening? Why would you even give them a second of your time?
I mean, I've been in this business for 10 years, and the keyboard warriors, it used to get me at first, but the comments, if there's a negative comment, I just laugh at it, honestly.
Right. But it's easy to speak from the bleachers, right? Yeah. Right. I would have passed the ball. Why didn't he do that, bro? Yeah. Have you even picked up a ball in your life,
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. You have a lot of wisdom. I could tell you've done a lot of reading and learning, and you're only 31, right?
Yeah, 31.
You speak, like what we talked about, you're very well spoken.
Thank you.
And you've learned a lot, and I'm really excited to see how Monbeau Afrique does in America, and congrats on all the success in South Africa.
Thank you.
Guys, if you guys want to check out the perfumes, or cologne, I call it. But
so I see people call it cologne or perfumes. These are EDP, so they're unisex.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can pick your smell, and again, some people like different kind of smells.
I like that one.
Which one's that one?
Bebe de Amor.
De Amor. Yeah, that's a great one as well.
I'll link everything down below, guys. Check it out. Check out the get up. He gave me a nice shirt here and the sweats he's wearing. I washed them because I spilled egg whites on them on accident.
I know, really?
I'm not gonna dry them though.
Okay,
I don't want,
yeah. Just let it.
Don't want them to shrink. But
no.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I learned a lot, man. Actually, in that last part too. Like it really
appreciated.
sticks with me, and a lot of the things you're saying, I believe and I think hold true. So. A lot of value, guys, here, and I hope you guys learned something. Hit the freaking subscribe button. Do it.
Subscribe. Living large.